Robert T. Kiyosaki is a successful businessman, investor, and author from the United States. His best-selling book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is an incredible guide for anyone seeking to improve their financial situation. Kiyosaki has made a name for himself by discussing topics related to money and finance that aren't covered in the classroom. But for today, this is Investing Path. Robert Kiyosaki's thoughts on the need to spend rather than save money, since it gives an in-depth account of the Federal Reserve's recent actions and describes the grave dangers facing the international economy. But before we go on, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and click the subscribe and bell button as well while you're at it to stay updated for more of our content. Now let's delve deeper into this matter. Real financial education is not taught in schools, and Robert Kiyosaki explained why he doesn't save money based on his past experiences. In 1971, the dollar became debt and taxes. In other words, there are three types of people in the world: an investor, a trader, and a speculator all exist. Personally, he sees himself as an investor rather than a trader because the latter would merely be a buyer and seller, as in the case of real estate. Most people pursuing Dogecoins and all this other stuff, including Bitcoin, as he would say, are speculators. All kinds of gamblers expecting it would go up. A flipper is someone who buys a house with the intention of selling it quickly for a profit. However, Robert Kiyosaki does not advocate such a strategy. There are speculators who are losing money right now, but he sees himself as an investor. One reason is that the Bretton Woods Agreement was signed in 1944. US officials made the pledge to back the currency with gold in 1944 at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. But as you know, the United States lies a lot, so the rest of the world says, okay, we'll accept the dollar because it's as good as gold. Because why would you save money? Since 1971, when the US government began printing its own currency and the Federal Reserve Bank ceased to exist as a functional financial institution, saving money has become pointless advice given by educators. The Federal Reserve System intends to transfer this burden to the European Central Bank. A number of central banks, including the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, and the People's Bank of China, are keen to get rid of it. Right now, the only way for money to enter the market is if the Fed produces money. Commercial banks such as US Bank, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo receive the funds and then provide loans to customers. But if the Fed currency is released, they won't need these institutions, and the only way people can access money right now is through credit cards, mortgages, and school loans, none of which will exist in the future. Then, they resort to Marxism, or communism, and hand out stimulus checks in the form of universal basic income. Since businesses no longer require these middlemen, they are bypassing them and sending you money directly. It's termed totalitarianism, because the government has complete power over every aspect of an individual's life, from their thoughts to their breathing, to their injections, to their money, to how they are obtained, to where it is spent, to whether or not they are permitted to travel. Robert Kiyosaki's generation, the baby boomers of the 1960s and 1980s, was not fond of investing in the stock market, because back when he was a kid, the common perception was that stock market investors were just out to gamble. What caused such a sudden influx of people into the stock market? The 401k plan was introduced in 1974, and he hadn't dared touch his yet. He has no interest in contributing to a retirement plan like a 401k or individual retirement account, and he doesn't need to because, as a business owner, he is responsible for the growth of his own wealth. Due to lack of interest from his generation, it was necessary for them to take action. That's why the 401k was developed between 1960 and 1980. People didn't trust the stock market and wanted a safer way to invest their money after the market disaster from 1987. Then Greenspan emerges. He works for the Federal Reserve. Remember that the Federal Reserve is not a government agency, and that when Greenspan presented his ideas, he did so with a PowerPoint presentation. As Robert Kiyosaki would say, Plunge Protection Team, Greenspan Put, or Don't Fight with the Fed are all names for this group. If you were investing with Greenspan, you would be protected by a plunge protection team every time the market took a nosedive. The boomers of his generation are succeeding then. Whenever the market falls, the Federal Reserve and the Treasury will always come to his rescue, and that day has come. Here in the United States, we have what are known as zombie corporations, of which 20% are included. These companies are technically bankrupt but are kept afloat by the Federal Reserve. This is communism. In any case, stock prices are safeguarded. The Federal Reserve and other world central banks have just begun buying gold, making it a safe bet that gold's price won't fall. They'll make an effort to keep the gold price high. So I'm not a big fan of the stock market, but gold and silver are both rising in prices as more gold continues to pile up. If you invest in these equities, the government guarantees you won't lose money. If you want to know why gold won't crash but crypto might, that's why. The Fed doesn't want it. Therefore, dear viewers, you need to sharpen your wits, as what possibly hasn't happened yet is a Fed currency or a yuan coin, a Chinese one that would obliterate the Bitcoin. The point that Robert Kiyosaki is making is that everything is controlled. The entire thing is fabricated. During 1980, the Hunt brothers from Texas attempted to corner the gold market through manipulation of the silver market. The price of silver reached $50 per ounce in 1980. What's happening is intriguing. But remember that everything is influenced on a larger scale. That means that Wells Fargo would be extinct alongside the Federal Reserve coin. While he thinks this is likely scenario, he can't guarantee it. The only way money enters into the system is for individuals like you as capitalists to borrow money. Therefore, the arrival of a Fed coin would be disastrous for him. He gets his money by having excellent credit, and he and Ken McCroy borrowed $160 million. He finds it ridiculous because people like him can acquire a credit card where they get a student loan. But that doesn't stop people like him from using it to fund their careers. Because his poor father was a Marxist and taught people that capitalists are crooks. And because of this, there is a lack of financial education and an abundance of crooks in the world. Furthermore, there are also what we call the crook ministers. It is not the money, it's the people. And our educational system which is not set up to teach you about money. Because Robert Kiyosaki believes the former President Obama favors those men. In the same way that cash flow from a house is a verb, an asset is a noun. The addition of a verb to a noun reveals whether the item is an asset or a liability. A liability is a source of negative cash flow. It is considered an asset if it results in a positive cash flow. One of Robert Kiyosaki's assets is the 7,000 rental homes he owns. Money keeps coming in every month, although many of those with the large mansion on the hill are actually bleeding to death. Aside from food, taxes are the largest expense for most people, which is something the poor don't realize. The wealthy avoid working for pay since taxes are their primary financial concern. So, if he obtains a job, he will be bringing in earned money, and he invests in a portfolio. He will be bringing in passive income. Earned income refers to money that a person receives in exchange for their labor, such as a doctor or programmer, while capital gains such as the profit made by selling an Apple iPhone for $20 instead of $10 fall under the category of income generated by the person's investments. He can only wish them well, because most of the disgruntled folks don't realize the difference between the three types of income, and the rich don't have jobs, they have assets. As a result, the typical tiny person in the world. You may make $1 million and owe no taxes if you have the correct financial education, which is why he advocates for it. Most individuals, however, do not have the level of education and so cannot afford to buy what he sells. McDonald's is a real estate investor as well as a burger chain. The government receives no revenue from them. His dad told him to get your MBA after he returned to Vietnam from 1973. His father was merely practical in his advice that he study real estate if he aspired to financial success, but he shot back that he would never learn to use debt as money because the US dollar had become debt in 1971. Therefore, if you master the art of using debt as money, you will never again have to argue that you are financially unable to get things you desire. After the market collapsed in 2008, the banks handed me $300 million in tax-free funds to invest in real estate that the dummies had lost. Don't you know that buying at the peak of the market is a bad idea? No. This is the derivatives market, which was hit hard by the subprime mortgage crisis. Wall Street paid us hundreds of millions of dollars to sweep up all that real estate after the market crashed due to the actions of the MBS and all that stuff. It was over for these guys. When asked by the typical guy, why don't you utilize debt? The question is now fair because everyone may do it. The current state of affairs is that people have so low credit scores that they are unable to obtain a loan. They believe those with wealth are dishonest, but rich just operate under a different set of rules. Which is why the stock market was established. That sector of the economy is soaring to new heights on the back of counterfeit currency. When it comes to real estate, we simply do not understand how New Yorkers make ends meet. They say there's no inflation, but have you seen the price of food lately? Robert Kiyosaki was looking at an apartment and it cost him $55 million, just like real estate in Silicon Valley, where no one can afford to live. There are multiple bubbles, including a real estate, student loan, and healthcare sectors. His generation's baby boomers are about to begin retiring, but there isn't enough money to go around. Social security is broken, pensions are broken, students are broke, and the government is screwing everybody over the piling on debt. That's not economics, it's bubblenomics. But you won't learn this in class, and nobody seems to understand why we need so much paper currency. For the simple reason that it's an addiction, and they want to save something. You know, it's like heroin. You take one shot and think, oh, this is fine, I'll stop next week. But then the economy tanks and you can't. Since Trump slashed our taxes here in the United States, it's only getting worse. So 2008, what transpired then? They called it the Great Depression and used money printing to end it, but they didn't actually fix anything. Derivatives doubled from $70 trillion to $1.2 trillion in the intervening years. As a result of the recession, the PhD requirement was implemented because this doesn't give the complete story. Helen, the PhD, just confirmed that they do in fact own PhDs. Well, it's not so dissimilar from the long-term capital ITCM, which also boasted Nobel laureates in its ranks. Robert Kiyosaki's poor dad and other academics are feeling the effects of the current global economic crisis. The student debt crisis has led to the retirement of the baby boom generation. Do you need to be an economist to predict the future then? The national debt to GDP ratio is 109 in 109. We've been at war for 12 years, and we're almost 90 years too late. Now is the time to continue printing. And that concludes our video for today. We hope you learned a thing or two from this interesting perspective of Robert Kiyosaki. And if you have some thoughts to share, then feel free to leave them in the comment section below and let's talk about it. But for now, thank you for watching. This is Investing Path. Make sure to give this video a like, subscribe, and click the bell button as well for more of our personal investment and financing videos. Thanks again for watching and we'll see you soon.